Well, welcome. My name is Kate Harmon, and I am the Director of Cross-Campus Engagement for the Lundquist Center for Entrepreneurship. And on today's Getting Ahead series, I'm very excited to have with us Tom Hale. Tom is the founder and president of Backroads, which is the world's largest adventure travel company. So welcome, Tom.
Really nice to be here. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. I thought we would start off with having you share a little bit about your early career. You went to UO for a very brief time, and your running career helped land you here. So if you can share with us a little bit about your college years and sort of your early out of school job experiences right before you founded Backroads, to give us a little bit of context, I think that would be really helpful for our audience.
Okay, happy to do that. I had a pretty unorthodox college migratory experience. I was crazy about running back in the late 60s, early 70s. I grew up down here in Northern California and followed my high school track coach to Whitworth in Spokane, Washington. At the end of that first freshman year there, he decided to go off to do something else. And so I woke up in the middle of the night and said, maybe I better think more serious about where I'm running. So I transferred to the University of Oregon. I was at the University of Oregon for a couple of years. I then moved on to Berkeley to get a bachelor's degree and finished up at UCLA to get a master's degree. As far as kind of what I was studying and how that path transpired, I will summarize it by saying I was pre-med, pre-law, pre-Fontaine, pre-question mark, pre-get a degree, pre-get another degree, and then pre-follow my passion. And it literally unfolded in sort of equal increments along that line. I had a short but really wonderful experience at Oregon. Probably my two most noteworthy events. I won the Twilight Meet, which was the precursor to the Prefontaine Invitational, I believe, ran at 27:57 6 mile. It was so long ago that it was wasn't in metrics. That's
wow.
Yeah. And I was on the in 1973 NCAA cross country championship team. And I have this photo here that I get a kick out of.
I love this.
This is me down in the bottom, and the entire front row looks like we're running for the cast of a Charles Manson movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, you're right next to Pre.
That's right.
And then is Bill Bowerman's in that picture too?
Bill Dellinger was our coach on one hand, and Bill Bowerman was in the picture on the other hand. We were some of his original guinea pigs on the waffle iron Nike shoes. And yeah, it was a very really fun time that I spent in Oregon.
That's wonderful. Well, so you graduated master's degree from UCLA. What were you hoping to do out of college then, and how long between when you ended college before Backroads was founded?
Well, let's see. I got my master's degree in 1976 at UCLA. And took my first job in Las Vegas, Nevada, as an environmental planner. And that was probably the worst and best thing I ever could have done in my life. No offense to anybody living in Las Vegas, but it's just not my kind of city. So that was the worst part of it. The best part of it was shocking enough to, I think, cause me to move into where I am now.
That's awesome. Well, I know the story of how Backroads came to be is very extraordinary and really is your exemplary of your philosophy to follow your own passion and make it your life's work. Can you share with us how you came up with the idea for Backroads?
Sure. I think it would, maybe going a little bit further back, I was driving down the Big Sur coastline with my mom and my dad, and my mom said to me that Tom, this is a long time ago, so I hope I get it right. My mom said that, Tom, you are somebody that needs to be passionate about what they do. I've always been that way. I remember I had a stamp collection. I was really into stamp collecting, or just ridiculous things running. I was really into that. And I think what she was saying is, Tom, not so sure you're really into what you're doing right now. And she couldn't have been more right. And so, finished that drive, got my degree there, went to Las Vegas. And about, I think it was 6 months into that job, I woke up in the middle of the night once again, and a light bulb went off. Don't know where this came from. I was commuting by bike, which was kind of a weird thing to do in Las Vegas back then. It happened to be the murder capital of the world. And I woke up and I had this idea that I wanted to take people on bike trips. So I woke up, took about 8 pages of notes, and I then, as a breakfast, had made my mind up. Probably there was nothing about that decision that made sense. I didn't know anything really to speak of exceptionally deeply about travel, about biking, about business. And I took off on a 5,000-mile bike trip around the West by myself and got back and just jumped into it. And, when I look back on it, so I didn't have much going for me specific to my decision, but what I did have was I had an incredible amount of commitment, discipline, competitiveness, had street smarts, had confidence, had a sort of never say die in really hard conditions. I didn't have any money behind me and just started from the absolute ground up, quintessential garage startup. And I had tons of passion and tons of focus. And just a couple of little things that I've always found to be helpful, that I had the ability to go Rain Man on a spreadsheet or a process of numbers and trends and make a quick back of the envelope decision on estimates, and just in a way that has stood me well. So not your typical path into doing something.
So this was back in 1979. I'm curious, from the time you had this idea before you left your own job to start this, like what was that time frame, and what did you have to put in place before?
Yeah, so it was 1976.
Okay.
No, you're right. I graduated in 1978. I was in Las Vegas in 1979, and it was 6 months into that job that I had the idea. 4 months later, i.e. 10 months into the job, that I quit and took off. And my parents were really surprisingly understanding. Maybe it was because I paid my way through college when I threw out 7 years of higher education to do something that had no financial likelihood of surviving, let alone making any money. But, I just, it seemed to make sense to me. So there you go.
Remember, like, what were your original product offering? So it was the bike trips. Was there anything else?
Yeah, we started off as being Backroads Bicycle Touring, just offering bike trips. Word to the wise, when you go into something, be careful how narrowly you define it, because it took us about 2 decades to get beyond the bicycle touring part of our name that we had given up probably 15 years earlier as we expanded into other activities and whatnot. But we started out with just bike trips, started out doing trips all over the Western US and Canada. And in fact, the original plan for Backroads was really predicated on my riding a bike through all these beautiful places around the West, and thinking, gosh, it'd be great to go back and do them as trips for people. So that's what I did. My first and most noteworthy book that I ever read on business was this little thin book. It was called Buy Low, Sell High, Collect Early, and Pay Late. And it was pretty simple, but I'll tell you, business doesn't have to be quite as complicated as one thinks it might be. It's gotten a lot more complicated, I will say to that, but still, buy low, sell high, collect early, pay late. If you come up with an equation where that works, and we have, that's a pretty good way to go.
Well, and this was all during, pre-internet time period. So I'm curious, how did you get the word out, or how did you, able to get your customers to learn about your company?
A lot of trial and error. Like I say, I didn't know anything about what I was doing. And so I talked to people. I tried this and tried that, and did a little PR, did a little advertising, did some direct mail. and just sort of figured out what was working and what wasn't working. And it was such a different world, because back then, you would do something and maybe the following year you'd figure out if it worked or not. Now you do something today, and late in the day or the next day, you actually have an exact read on all of your digital efforts, which is all we're doing nowadays, and a lot of direct mail too.
That's true. I'm curious, was there ever that aha moment where you knew Backroads was going to be big?
It's been so incremental, and other than a couple of blips, 9/11, war in Iraq, Great Recession, we've had really steady year over year. If you drop out those blips, the curve is very, very steady, accelerative more recently, until 2 months ago. So there hasn't been any specific aha moment, so much as I've become more accustomed to our trend and how we fit in the world. I think we are as an organization getting better at knowing where we're going.
That makes a lot of sense. I know that you and Backroads are incredibly customer focused. Can you share us a little bit of why you keep customers at the forefront of your business?
It is everything about why we have succeeded and are so dominant in our industry. It is, and by the way, I don't want to take credit that is beyond the credit I deserve, because we're not the largest adventure travel company in the world. Probably we are definitely far and away the largest active travel company, who also has a fairly big element of adventure that caters to a high-end demographic. So just wanted to make sure that we weren't unclear there. But so I have been guest focused from the very start of Backroads. We are more so now than ever, incredibly focused on that. It is a company-wide ethic. Guest focus is far and away our number one guiding principle. We have the most amazing leaders to deliver on that. We are absolutely a meritocracy. We are performance driven, and we really mean business about serving our guests. And I don't think there's anybody you'd ever meet that works within Backroads. I don't even know if you can meet guests that wouldn't be able to talk about that and see it. And it takes, I would say, relentless commitment and discipline to stay on top of that sort of ethic, and to create an organization-wide force that is moving us towards that. And it absolutely has determined everything about our market share and our dominance in the workplace.
Well, and I think I was reading somewhere where it's like over 80% in terms of customers that come back and take a second trip with you. Is that?
Yeah, it's probably more like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 repeat, referral, and new business. We've worked hard to create new business, and so we like that balance. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I also know that cultivating a strong culture is really important for you as well, and that's something you've also been able to do. So could you share a little bit about like how you go about cultivating culture in your organization?
Yeah, I look at it as this business of how guest focused we are. It's all part of a circle and a wheel, you might say, where we can only be as guest focused as we are with a organization of people who feel cultivated, well cared for, who are inspired, who are motivated, who are empowered. And those things go around and around, constantly around and around. They feed off of each other. And so I am personally incredibly committed to just finessing that dynamic, to looking for where we're right on it and where we're too far and where we're not enough. And it never ends. I think the best maybe example of how important that is, creating a company culture, is our annual staff ride we do every year. I've been doing it for close to 4 decades. And on that staff ride, we have people who come to our wherever we're holding it. We hold it all over the world, usually in October, so it's somewhat weather related. Southern Europe works, and a few other places. And people, will have right now. We probably had close to 500 people on it last year. A lot of them are coming on their own dime as far as getting there, and then we take care of all the expenses of having this amazing rolling party, you might say, that allows us to stay in touch. And it's one of the many things we do, but it's an amazing experience.
That does sound amazing. Well, let's talk about you. You mentioned previously that you started this company from scratch, and I know from our conversation that you mentioned you've never taken on debt. So, can you talk to us a little bit about why this was an important strategy for your company?
Yeah, I suppose it wasn't so much a strategy not to take on debt as a strategy not to, well, I never thought we could get a loan, actually. That's how the incredible business acumen I had. It's like, I'm not even going to try.
Wow.
So, we just so happened we didn't take on debt. More importantly, I didn't take on partnerships and didn't entertain private. I entertained them, but I always turned them down. Private equity interests, et cetera. Still turn that down. And um, I think had I not done that, that we'd probably lose everything we've worked so hard to achieve had we acted otherwise. Backroads is an incredibly special company. I obviously am biased. I don't think I'm wrong, though, in that respect. It is because of our company culture. It is because of so many things that are, it's a subjective, intangibles, et cetera. And I don't think we'd have the intentional and controlled growth that we've had. And it's more important now than ever in this coronavirus world we live in. The fact that we have not taken on debt and that we have strong cash reserves means everything at a time like this more than ever before.
Yeah, sure does. I'm curious if you, as you look back over the lifespan of Backroads, are there one or two like really big successes that you can share with us that you are really proud of?
I think that the successes that I think of are more sort of part of the process, but the fact that we're not afraid of change. A lot of folks who start up kind of lifestyle businesses, this could be looked at as a lifestyle business. I mean, I look at it that way, but it's become a fairly large lifestyle business. A lot of folks, I think, that get into this, they get into it. Oh, I like to ride a bike, for instance, or I like to be active, or whatever it might be. And eventually the business starts becoming burdensome because it's getting in the way of maybe their passion. I have felt lucky that I still am passionate about being outdoors and being active, but I'm also incredibly passionate about running a business. I love running this business, and so um, that's really I think done well for us. It's run like a startup now. I'd say it runs like a startup more in the last 2, 3, 4 years than ever before. We are as much as we're not afraid of change. We are hyper focused on what we're trying to do. We're always aspiring to be number one in all of our, whatever niche we're in, whether it be biking, walking, multi-adventure, family travel. We aspire to be number one, and we are number one in our demographic and our there.
I know from our previous conversation that you highlighted that you've been really disciplined about preparing for unforeseen economic circumstances, like again the one we're currently in. Can you share why this is something that has been fundamental to your business planning process, and why a business leader needs to prepare for these uncertain economic times?
Yeah, I would say that 10 years ago, the Great Recession was probably the best example of something where we asked the right questions, and that has made all the difference in the last 10 years to prepare us for today. I had no idea how important that preparation was, had no idea that anything this impactful would ever come along, but it certainly moved us in the right direction. So back in 2009, we asked ourselves two questions. When I say we asked ourselves two questions, I probably wrote 20 pages down about this whole process. But we really came down to saying, okay, how can we be more competitive, and how can we differentiate ourselves from the competition? And in that process, we said, what are we doing? What are we doing better than the competition? what are we doing better, but we're not doing it enough to talk about it. And through that effort, and that was a 2-year effort, 3-year, really ongoing, we uncovered all kinds of things that we actually were doing better, but we said we're not doing it enough. And so we came up with ways to improve what we're doing for our guests. Once again, all about guest focus, but then to also be able to talk about it with our guests ahead of time. Because you can just imagine the cycle. If people have to go on a competitor's trip, it's not like they're buying from Amazon and buying from somebody else and they find out one week what's better and go to the next product the next week. It's sort of like, well, you find out about Backroads, you go on a Backroads trip, then maybe 1 or 2 years later, you go on a competitor's trip, and I didn't think it was quite as good, and then you go on our trip, and it's like, wow, they really are consistent. Anyway, we're talking a multi-year approach. That's not a good approach. So we got very frontal with what's better about Backroads, and over the years, we just got better and better at being better and better at telling our story. So that was a really important question and process that stood us in good stead. Then the other thing we said in asking ourselves that question was, we have to prepare for these hard times. And so the first one was about becoming more profitable, really. But we said that we need to maintain and improve our geographic diversity, and especially as it relates to having a strong domestic offer, even though international travel is always, for every company out there, it has a higher margin, et cetera. So right now, we see all of our competitors trying to do trips in North America, even though they didn't have anything on the books and they're not really going to be able to sell it. They can't really break into it. We've got a huge domestic offer. And so right now, folks are flocking to that. And by the way, our customers are 93% US and 2% Canadian and 5% everything else. So US is everything, basically. And so that was a really important point on top of becoming more profitable. And so those two things over the last 10 years have allowed us to build up cash reserves that allow us to ride this out. We can go for a couple of years if we had to without running a trip. I think it would be okay, which that is not going on in the travel industry right now.
That's amazing to hear.
And then there's one other thing that's specific to the environment we're in now that I really feel good about is the way we run trips was designed for coronavirus. We're outdoors, we're active, we're moving at our own pace, as social or not social as you want to be, all day long. And we're doing everything else when we're in a nice hotel, et cetera, of course, that we can do. But in general, we have the right outcome right now that we'll be talking about.
That's great to hear. I know you talked earlier about how you've resisted selling Backroads and you really kept it within your family. Can you discuss why that's the case and what do you see now for the future with Backroads?
Yes. Well, first of all, there's probably more private equity fishing going on out there than I've ever seen before. And I believe that as maybe cocky as this might sound, that I can do a better job than any private equity outcome will ever accomplish. I honestly believe that. I say I myself, that is a little cocky. What I really mean to say is I think that the organization of Backroads and the people we have in it can do a better job than if somebody comes in. And from the outside, I got a lot of friends in private equity, and most of them, when it comes right down to it, they'll say that, Tom, don't muck it up. And I'll agree with them. It is going to muck it up. And so most of the serious money out there is usually of a private equity kind of nature. And no matter what they say, and no matter what kind of terms and conditions you have, there comes a time where the world has to change. There has to be an exit strategy for them, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, it's a little bit different. There's an exit strategy for everybody, but I'm hopeful that I can continue this on beyond myself in a manner that will work.
It's working well for you, so don't change anything. I thought we would end with a question I ask all of our guests. If you were to give any kind of advice to a student looking to follow a similar career, entrepreneurial career path as your own, what kind of recommendations or advice or tips would you give them to be successful as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would. First of all, this is coming from a very old school perspective. I've been doing this for 41 years, and so take it with a grain of salt. It's a different world we live in now. Everybody gets all kinds of money and can be unprofitable for years and years and years, and then they go bankrupt, like 9 out of 10 times. But I'd say that it, it's very hard to pull off what we pulled off. I've worked 7 days a week for 41 years. It is all about creating value for other people, also known as your customers. The way to do it is to do it better than anyone else could ever do it. It's really helpful if you can be doing something you love, because like I say, go back to my first point, it's really hard. And the last two things I'd say, it's okay to build and grow versus build and sell. And all of those things together, they've worked for me.
Tom Hale is the founder and president of Backroads. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kate. Pleasure to talk to you.